Greetings, dear viewers. You are on the Cross-Moto Jawa Motorcycles channel. For several generations, this machine brings warm and pleasant memories. From the 1960s through the 1980s, Czechoslovakian motorcycles were the ultimate dream for Soviet people. As years passed and the Soviet Union collapsed, the once thriving Jawa factory, which exported 95% of its products to socialist countries, entered a period of decline. A completely unexpected piece of news for the vast majority of motorcycle enthusiasts in 2018 was the presentation of 3 brand new motorcycle models in the Indian city of Mumbai. Jawa Classic, Jawa 42, also known as 42, and Jawa Perak. The beginning of 2024 was marked by another piece of news. The company introduced a new model, Jawa 350, and we'll talk about it in more detail in this segment. Enjoy watching. Before we move on to discussing the features and details of the new model, there's one thing we need to clarify. What drives Indian participation and brand loyalty? For this, let's go back to the 1960s. At that time, Czechoslovakian motorcycles began to be produced under license on Indian soil. This activity was carried out by a company from Mysore since 1960. Initially, the equipment was sold under the original brand, but in 1973, there was a rebranding, and the motorcycles received the name SD, which came from the Slavic languages. Over more than 3 decades, the Indians mastered the production of about 20 motorcycle models. But in 1996, the SD brand ceased to exist under the pressure of motorcycle companies from Japan and China. However, in 2022, SD was revived by a company, just as 4 years earlier, the Jawa brand was established in 2016, and 60% of them belong to the Mahindra Corporation. Work on acquiring the Jawa brand began immediately. The Czechs did not agree to sell everything completely, but for a certain amount they allowed the use of the name and the design of classic Czechoslovak motorcycles. Work on creating new machines began to pick up steam. That's how the trio of new Jawa motorcycles debuted in 2018, as mentioned in the introduction. In January 2024, a new model, the 350, was introduced, which is intended to replace the 300cc model that debuted in 2018. Sales of the new Jawa are expected to start any day now. The Jawa 350 is expected to compete primarily in the domestic Indian market, as well as in Asian markets, with motorcycle models such as the Royal Enfield Bullet 350, Honda CB 350, and Benelli Imperial 400. Let's find out what the new Jawa is like, and then we'll do a brief comparison with its main competitors. The Jawa 350 is a modern bike with a vintage look. This model is equipped with a 4-stroke single-cylinder engine with a displacement of 334 cc. At the same time, we have the following cylinder-piston group dimensions. Cylinder diameter is 82 mm, piston stroke is 65 mm. The valve timing features 2 overhead camshafts and 4 valves per cylinder. The engine's compression ratio is just 9.5 to 1. The torque and power characteristics are as follows. Maximum power is 22.50 horsepower. Maximum torque is 28.1 Newton meters. This liquid-cooled engine has its radiator neatly integrated between the 2 front tubes of the duplex frame. Fuel injection and electronic engine management have long become an integral part of serious Indian motorcycles, since the national emission standard Infrared 5 corresponds to Euro 5. The engine shares a single crankcase with a 6-speed gearbox and a slipper clutch. The engine is started using an electric starter. It is worth noting that the previous model, Trista, had a higher engine power of about 27 horsepower, but it had lower torque characteristics. It is also worth noting that the 334cc engine has already been installed on the Jawa Perak since 2018. But in the case of the new model, the 350, it was made less tuned. Important and noticeable changes have occurred in the braking system. The new Jawa uses a 280mm front disc and a 240mm rear disc for stopping. And all this is complemented by a dual-channel ABS, which is a significant improvement compared to the 280mm front disc and the 153mm rear drum brake with single-channel ABS. On the previous model of the motorcycle, the front wheel suspension is a telescopic fork with a tube diameter of 35 mm and a travel of 115 mm. The rear wheel suspension uses a pair of shock absorbers with adjustable spring preload. The rear wheel axle travel is 82 mm. The front wheel has a diameter of 18 inches, and the rear one is 17. The Jawa 350 weighs 194 kilograms fully equipped. That's a lot of weight for a 350. However, it's worth remembering that this motorcycle is styled as a classic and vintage model, and instead of plastic, it has metal parts. The seat height is 790 millimeters, which is 25 millimeters higher compared to the previous model. The new Jawa's fuel tank holds 13.2 liters, with a consumption of about 3 liters per 100 kilometers, and the consumption is about 3 liters per 100 kilometers. On the 300 model, the tank held 14 liters. The maximum speed the motorcycle can reach is 120 kilometers per hour. Jawa 350 will be available in 3 colors: maroon, black, and mystic orange. Now, a little comparison with competitors. For better clarity, here is a table in front of you. As you can see, the main characteristics of these 4 motorcycles are more or less practically the same. This applies to both the power and torque figures, as well as the top speed and weight. And most likely, with such similar parameters, when choosing a bike, the buyer will be guided by their design preferences, as well as their loyalty to a particular brand. The expected price of the new Jawa 350, which is set to go on sale in India in January 2024, is 215,000 rupees, which is equivalent to $2,600. It is possible that this motorcycle will soon appear on the market in Europe or the Commonwealth of Independent States countries. However, you shouldn't expect its price to remain at the level of the Indian domestic market. That's the new Jawa 2024 motorcycle. Write in the comments what you think about this model. At this point, my story comes to an end. This was Cross Motor Channel. Don't forget to stay active on the channel. Sharing, commenting, and subscribing are all welcome. Special thanks to everyone who supports my channel, financially using the details provided in the description. Thank you for your attention. See you next time.